Is this the right one? Okay. I want to go back. There we are. Okay. So I think the financial crisis, as we're aware, is beginning to challenge legitimacy of not only the financial system, but I think beginning to challenge legitimacy of organisation. I think the protests are very much questioning many of the norms that we have lived with over many years, and also beginning to create demands for alternatives. So I was actually in the green zone yesterday, walking through, and I saw you have your own Occupy Nicosia protest. Church and state, I think, was one way, military dictatorship the other. Lots of examples of wanting to occupy factories, if there's any factories left, of course. And clearly some demands there for something new, something fresh. And we're seeing this around the world. On the other hand, we're also seeing, if you see from the New Yorker there, old ideas beginning to reassert themselves as well. So no sooner had many of the countries bailed out the banks and socialized the costs of financial mismanagement, than large companies like Goldman Sachs and other investment organizations began to blame the states for their fiscal problems and the large financial issues that they got in. So the memory of the role of society in compensating for the cost of a financial crisis was quite short in many ways. So old ideas around managing some of these fiscal uncertainties are beginning to become re-established. What I want to argue is that we need to start to grasp this moment and really start to look at the alternatives. If we look at even the banking establishment, this is Andrew Haldane, one of the managers of the Bank of England. Even they recognized that the financial system was not meeting the needs of the wider society. It was very good at meeting the demands of shareholders and a narrow group of managers, but perhaps has shortchanged everyone else. And this concern has actually become much more widely felt in terms of the disparities in executive pay. So it's not just in the financial sector, it's in companies more generally. So if we look at the distribution of executive pay to average worker pay, this is primarily in the US, from US data. We see that in the last 15, 20 years with the period of globalization, the ratios have moved into something like 600 to 700 times the median executive pay and the average worker's pay. So we're seeing incredible detachment of these senior executives from the realities of many employees' lives, and in fact many other managers' lives. And these leaders are making very important decisions that alter and affect all our lives. So we're living increasingly in a winner-takes-all environment if you're at the top of an organization. A 1% increase in share price in these organizations leads to executives pocketing around about $1 million of a bonus. So they have a considerable interest in beginning to pump up the share price of organizations. And a lot of research from many of my colleagues at Oxford and elsewhere have shown that there's actually very little relationship between these rewards and performance, or rewards and risk. So what are we paying for becomes a question. So it's not only inequalities at the top of organizations, it's inequalities more widely in society. So we look at how modern organizations, modern capitalist forms of organizing production have been developing. We can see in Europe, we can see in America a widening income distributions, widening inequality. So real challenges for political leaders and society more widely in terms of creating a more sustainable and stable society. Now, those are the more well-known factors that are influencing the world of work and the world of organizing and the world of management. But there are a range of others which are important, and ones that I really want to focus on, which are challenging our traditional models of organizing and managing. And there's a few I want to focus on. One, and these are long-term trends. One is around the nature of work and how that's changing, and the importance of knowledge. The other one is around the shift of most work from products to services. Everyone has a customer. A lot of work, a lot of what organizations do is becoming more servicized. So it's actually about producing complex services and bundling services together that becomes important for the profitability and the value added of organizations. So if we think about manufacturing, it's no longer good enough to just have a good product at a good price, but you need to be able to offer services alongside that in terms of, if I take an example, Rolls-Royce in the UK, its winning engine, developed in the 1990s, developed an entirely new business model around, which is called Power by the Hour, where they were able to sell that engine to many of the civil aviation companies on the basis that they would provide all the maintenance and support and take that problem away from those operators. So actually packaging a service proposition around a particular product is a very effective way of creating value. And more organizations are moving in that way. What's the implication? The implication is that you actually need to start to build complex knowledge, complex work, partner with people, form alliances, bring different knowledge in from different areas. We're also seeing a massive increase in information technology, which is speeding things up, that work can be located anywhere. So massive process of offshoring to places like India, Mexico, Turkey, Cyprus perhaps as well. So the location of work beginning to change. And also, if we look at, for example, the iPhone, if we're looking at now ecosystems of competition, so it's the networks that firms can actually organize using the power of their brand and the power of their design. But where companies like Apple really have an advantage is how they can manage that ecosystem of a global value chain in different locations, with different partners, with different relationships, with different knowledge, and integrate that together in an effective way. So, a lot of these factors are probably pretty well known to most of you here, because Cyprus is an open economy, pretty well exposed, so you're feeling the full force of many of these factors. What these pressures are suggesting is that the traditional models of organizing and managing are perhaps no longer as sustainable in the future. And what we need to start thinking about are new ways of organizing and managing. And what I mean by a traditional model is a bureaucratic, hierarchical organization, multi-layered, really one that's fit for a very stable environment of repetitive types of tasks, repetitive types of outputs, meeting reasonably stable market situations. And as many of our speakers have said in the introduction, that's not the world we live in anymore. So what do we need to start thinking about in terms of making our organizations more adaptable?